Social Security is making history right now, and the numbers being thrown around are genuinely staggering when you sit down and think about what they actually mean for tens of millions of Americans who depend on these benefits every single month, just to keep the lights on and food on the table. We are talking about a program that sends out roughly $1.5 trillion every single year to approximately 75 million people across the United States. And right now in 2026, we are crossing milestones that have never been crossed before in the entire history of this program. That is not an exaggeration. That is not clickbait. That is just the reality of where we are right now. And if you are someone who receives Social Security benefits or knows someone who does, you need to understand exactly what is happening and why it matters to your financial life going forward. As of March 2026, the average Social Security benefit landed at $2,079 per month. Now, for a lot of people, that number might not sound like much, but when you put it in context of where this program has been historically, it is a genuinely significant milestone. We are talking about a program that for decades paid out averages well below $2,000 a month, and now we are sitting here in the middle of 2026 watching the average creep higher and higher with each passing month. The reason this matters is not just symbolic. It matters because it tells us something real about the direction this program is moving and what beneficiaries can reasonably expect as we move through the rest of this year and into 2027. Here is what is coming next and why people should be paying attention. Right now, analysts and observers who track Social Security data closely are anticipating that the average monthly benefit is going to break through the $2,083 mark any day now. That specific number is important because once you hit $2,083 a month, you are officially looking at $25,000 a year from Social Security alone. $25,000 annually from a single program that requires no job application, no interview, no boss, and no commute. For retirees and disabled Americans living on fixed incomes, that kind of consistent monthly deposit is the foundation that everything else is built on top of, and watching that foundation grow even incrementally is genuinely meaningful for real people living real lives on tight budgets. But the milestones do not stop at $2,083. Beyond that, projections are pointing toward the average Social Security benefit reaching approximately $2,100 per month, sometime around August, September, or October of 2026. That is just a few months away from where we are right now, and it represents another historic threshold that this program has never hit before. To understand why that matters, you have to look back just 1 year to August of 2025, when the average Social Security benefit crossed $2,000 for the very first time in the history of the program. That was a massive deal. People who follow this stuff closely recognized it as a landmark moment. And now, here we are roughly 12 months later, on the verge of hitting $2,100. The average benefit climbed $100 in just about a year, and that pace of growth is something worth noting. Now here is where a lot of people start getting confused, and it is a completely understandable source of confusion. When you hear that the average Social Security benefit is going up and that history is being made and that these numbers keep climbing, the natural reaction for most beneficiaries is to look at their own bank account and wonder why their deposit has not changed. If the average is going up, why is my check the same as it was 3 months ago? Why has nothing changed for me personally, even though the headlines keep talking about bigger and bigger numbers? This is one of the most common questions people have about Social Security, and it deserves a real straight answer without any runaround. The truth is that your individual Social Security benefit does not change on a month-to-month basis throughout the year. With very rare and very specific exceptions that apply to a tiny fraction of beneficiaries, your benefit amount stays exactly the same from January all the way through December. It does not go up in the spring. It does not get adjusted in the summer. It does not change when new milestones are hit or when the average moves higher. The only time your benefit changes is in January of each new year when the annual cost of living adjustment, the COLA, gets applied. That is the one moment per year when your check reflects a change, and once that January adjustment is made, your benefit locks in at that new amount for the rest of that calendar year. So what is actually causing the average to move higher if individual benefits are staying the same? This is the part that makes total sense once someone explains it clearly. What is happening is that new people are filing for Social Security benefits every single month, and a significant portion of those new filers are coming in with benefit amounts that are higher than the current average. When someone who worked for decades at a decent wage files for retirement benefits and comes in at, say, $2,400 or $2,600 a month, that person's benefit pulls the overall average upward. Multiply that effect across hundreds of thousands of new filers coming into the system every year with higher starting benefits, and you get a slow but steady upward drift in the average. It is basic math, and it has nothing to do with existing beneficiaries receiving more money. It is entirely driven by new entrants coming in at higher amounts. This is actually an important distinction to understand because it changes how you interpret the news around Social Security. When you see a headline saying the average benefit hit a new record, that does not mean everyone got a raise. It means the composition of who is receiving benefits has shifted in a way that brought the average up. Long-time beneficiaries who have been on the program for years or even decades are often receiving amounts well below the current average because their benefits were calculated based on older earning histories and older COLA adjustments. Meanwhile, newer retirees who worked more recently at higher wages are coming in above the average and pulling that number up over time. This reality leads to something uncomfortable that does not get talked about enough in mainstream coverage of Social Security. Despite all the historic milestones and all the record averages being celebrated, there is an enormous number of Americans on Social Security who are genuinely struggling in a serious and sustained way. The program sends out $1.5 trillion a year and serves 75 million people, which sounds like an overwhelming amount of money until you realize how many of those 75 million people are receiving benefits that fall below the federal poverty line. Not slightly below, meaningfully below. There are people getting $800 a month, $900 a month, $100 a month from Social Security, and they are trying to cover rent, groceries, utilities, medications, and every other basic cost of living on that amount in an economy where even modest expenses add up fast. This is why various proposals that have circulated over the years deserve serious attention rather than being dismissed as unrealistic. One category of proposals focuses on bringing all Social Security benefits up to some minimum floor, whether that floor is set at the current average benefit around $2,100 or whether it is pegged to the federal poverty line. The idea behind these proposals is straightforward. If you spent your working life paying into Social Security, you should not end up in poverty because your earnings history happened to be lower than someone else's. A minimum benefit guarantee would protect the most vulnerable recipients from a fate that the program was never really designed to deliver, which is deep and grinding poverty in old age or disability. The federal poverty line proposal is particularly worth understanding because it addresses the most dire situations directly. Right now, a single person in the United States needs roughly $15,000 to $16,000 a year to be considered above the federal poverty line.
That works out to somewhere around $1,250 to $1,333 per month. There are Social Security recipients getting less than that right now, which means they are officially living in poverty on their Social Security income alone. Bringing every benefit
up to at least that threshold would not make anyone rich. It would not solve every financial problem facing elderly and disabled Americans. But it would, at minimum, ensure that the program is not actively delivering poverty to the people it was designed to help. Now, stepping back to the bigger picture of what is happening with these record averages and historic milestones, it is also worth acknowledging what all of this growth means for the long-term financial health of the Social Security trust funds. Every new beneficiary who comes into the program with a higher benefit amount draws on the trust fund at a higher rate than someone receiving a lower benefit. As the average benefit climbs from $2,000 to $2,083 to $2,100 and eventually higher, the total monthly outflow from the program increases accordingly. With 75 million people on the program and that number growing as the population ages, the cumulative effect of higher average benefits on the trust fund's solvency timeline is real and worth paying attention to. This does not mean people should hesitate to claim the benefits they have earned and are entitled to. If you have spent your career paying into Social Security through payroll taxes, those benefits belong to you, and you should claim them when It makes sense for your personal financial situation. The trust fund math is a separate problem for policymakers to solve, and the responsibility for keeping the program solvent over the long term lies with Congress and the administration, not with individual beneficiaries making personal decisions about when to retire or when to file. Do not let the big picture fiscal concerns talk you out of claiming what is rightfully yours at the time that works best for you and your family. What all of this really comes down to for the average person watching the news about Social Security milestones is a need for clarity about what these numbers actually mean in practical terms. The average benefit crossing $2,083 and heading toward $2,100 is real progress in a meaningful statistical sense. It reflects higher wages in the broader economy over recent decades, more workers retiring with longer and stronger earnings histories, and a gradual upward shift in what this program delivers to its newest recipients. But it does not mean your individual check went up. It does not mean the program has solved its poverty problem. And it does not mean the long-term funding challenges have gone away. What it does mean is that Social Security remains the single largest source of retirement and disability income for tens of millions of Americans, and that its role in the financial lives of ordinary working people is only growing more important over time. As the cost of living continues to rise, as healthcare expenses eat up larger and larger shares of fixed incomes, and as fewer workers have access to traditional pensions or adequate retirement savings, Social Security is often the one guaranteed monthly income stream standing between a modest but stable retirement and genuine financial hardship. Understanding how it works, why the averages move, and what the milestones actually mean gives you a clearer picture of your own financial foundation and what you can realistically count on going forward. The history being made right now with these record average benefits is worth acknowledging. $25,000 a year from Social Security is a real number that makes a real difference for real people. Watching the average climb from $2,000 to $2,100 in roughly a year is a sign of genuine momentum. But the work of making this program truly adequate for everyone who depends on it is far from finished. And staying informed about where it is headed is one of the most important things you can do for your own financial future.